traffic report, helping you enjoy the journey.
Right, it is 7:12. Now, as we've been hearing in the news this morning, search and rescue teams have now removed the bodies of 2 Canadian tourists believed to have been killed by an avalanche on Fiordland's Kepler Track. The deaths are a reminder of just how dangerous New Zealand's changing weather conditions can be. But they've also raised questions of whether safety needs to be better addressed when we're marketing our great outdoors. And joining me now is Nathan Watson from the Mountain Safety Council. Nathan, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. First of all, I mean, we don't know exactly what happened here. It seems as though it was an avalanche. How commonplace are those sort of conditions on well-known tracks like the Kepler?
Yeah, good morning, Rawdon. Conditions like that are very common in places like the Kepler Track. New Zealand's covered in mountains, and the changeable and the fast-changing weather conditions play a big impact on the mountain conditions. And what these guys would have experienced down on the Kepler is definitely typical of the New Zealand mountains during the wintertime. Yeah,
from what we know of these guys, very keen outdoorsmen. They know that they seem to be we don't know, well-equipped. They certainly seem to have known the sort of terrain they were going to be dealing with. Do you think there was just potentially some people who go up there and just completely underestimate the dangers?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people do. And it's not just international tourists, it's Kiwis as well. Standing back in Te Anau or in the city and considering and planning your trip, it's quite different to actually being up there in the mountains and experiencing that. So you do need to have some really key skills and competencies and be well experienced in that environment before you do head up. If you're not, then you need to go with someone who has been before and has that experience. Because once you're up there, it's the decisions that you make and the actions that you take that are critical to your safety, and safety is your responsibility, so you have to manage yourself in that environment.
Yeah, and Nathan, I think it's important to point out, as you just have, that we're not just talking about international tourists, we're talking about ourselves here as well. Is enough awareness raised, though, for tourists, do you think, within the community, particularly at the locations where walkers and climbers and trampers will gather? Do you think there's enough awareness?
I do. I think we can always do more. There is plenty of information available through lots of different formats, both in digital and in print. There's a great visitor centre down there in Te Anau, which has a huge amount of information available. And just connecting and talking to the local staff, you can draw out a huge amount of their knowledge. But we do need to look at ways that we can target the right messages to the right people. And with international visitors, I do think there is an opportunity to use some unique channels that might not necessarily be available to Kiwis.
Yeah, because we don't want to deter overseas visitors. We want to make this as wonderful but as safe as possible. This is worth a lot. This is worth an awful lot to us.
Absolutely. I mean, for Kiwis, it's the fabric of who we are in our nation, and getting into the outdoors is part of what we do and how most of us have grown up. And for international visitors, they come to New Zealand because of our great outdoors. So we don't want to deter people. We want participation to continue to increase. But it's a balance with safety and doing what we can to ensure people come back from a safe experience.
Nathan, tell me, you talk about the visitors centre, you talk about the signage. Is it a case, though, people have to seek it out? Or is it a case, do you think, that there is enough sort of general conversation when people get to this environment for the first time in New Zealand, saying, are you sure you've got the right gear? This is a dangerous time of year. Watch out for this. Don't be afraid to come back, those sort of messages? Or is it a case that these people have got to be very safety conscious to actually find that stuff out?
I don't think you have to be very safety conscious. You do need to take some personal responsibility and go and look for this information. Absolutely. It would be very hard to not find any safety information before you headed out into the outdoors. But I think there's always more opportunities to get the right messages in front of the right people at the right times, and that's what we have to go through after this and explore. What
about some sort of compulsory measures, enforcing maybe equipment of some sort? You know, it's a no-brainer that we cycle with helmets on our heads, we drive with seat belts on. This idea of maybe having some sort of avalanche emergency equipment in the winter, given how commonplace these situations obviously are, that's actually enforced, is that just impractical?
I mean, equipment is available for people going into that environment, but you've got to know how to use the equipment. That's key. There's no point carrying it if you don't know how to use it, and it's also about making the right decisions, as I said earlier. So you might have the right equipment on you, but if you make a poor decision or you get stuck in a really tricky environment, that equipment actually may not help you in any sense. So I think taking that step is probably a step too far at this stage.
Yeah, and I think, Nathan, as you've pointed out, you know, that there is advice there. If you don't know what you're doing, there are people who can take you up there. It's tragic. I must say, final comment I was going to make on this, huge praise to the team which went out to find these young men. No doubt gutted not to have been able to get to them to bring them back alive. But Nathan Watson from Mountain Safety Council, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, Rodney.